climate change and what's actually happening in the state of Florida. So, Lauren, do you want to take charge of this one?
Yeah, so I'm sure everyone has probably heard the Bomb Cyclone, the winter hurricane. I think it was yesterday I saw a photograph of cars literally frozen in a river of ice in Florida, and I've never seen anything like that before. And even here in Chicago, I mean, we just hit our 12th day in a row that we were below 20 degrees, and this hasn't happened since 1936, and then even before then, 1895. So this has only happened twice here. So we're seeing this. I mean, climate change is nothing new. However, we currently have a president and an administration that like to denounce climate change.
Well, he's a very stable genius, so.
Yeah. And, it's just extreme weather like this. I mean, this year we saw so many records being broken and just catastrophes at, one after another. This, this bomb cyclone, the wildfires in California, the mudslides, the floodings, the tsunamis.
I mean, like
fake news.
I mean, it's not fake when you can see photographs where the Arctic has lost 2/3 of its ice, where you see polar bears that are literally starving and drowning because it's too far to swim because their land is literally disappearing before their eyes. It's terrifying because it's happening so quickly, and for people that want to argue, well, it's cold outside, how can it be global warming? Well, when you have more water melting, giant ice shelves the size of Rhode Island, falling off in Antarctica, you have like all this fresh water that's now being introduced back into the salt water, and the mixing with the jet streams and whatnot, like it's making a lot of that colder Arctic wind getting further and further south, and that's why we're seeing what should be kept in the Arctic Circle, all those jet streams and whatnot. That cold air should be remaining in the northern hemisphere, and we're seeing it. If I can ask
you mentioned Antarctic.
Yes.
That's the South Pole.
Right. Well, I'm saying as a specific.
That's not ice. That's not ice. That's actual land.
No, I'm saying like off
the shores, because
yes.
there are ice sheets on.
We have a shelf or an ice shelf that's actually forming on Lake Michigan as we speak right now.
Oh.
I'm just saying, like, yes, there is the continent itself, but then there's also the.
Okay.
Yeah, well, the South is a nice archipelago that maybe one day will be warm enough for us to live on, along with Greenland. But for now, this is kind of exactly to people that are like, it's cold. I'm not sure whatever any of us will say will never convince anyone that it can be warm everywhere and then cold in certain places. But I would say if it's warm in the kitchen, maybe it's still cold by the door to get into the restaurant.
And also, just real quick, too, the Trump administration has basically taken out the word climate change from a lot of its scientific reports. And internationally, the other democratic nations are acknowledging that climate change is a serious threat to our species. And on top of that...
In fact, China is actually very much now poised to completely eclipse us on what ostensibly will become a multi-trillion-dollar industry.
Which is green energy. Guys.
Yeah, I mean...
Didn't they take the word scientific out of all the language?
No, scientific fact.
They took out climate change as well as a few other words, but climate change was one of the main words that they did take out.
I'm sure scientific will be the next word they take out.
And removing the United States from the Paris Agreement as well.
I think scientific fact is out. It's one of those connotations of scientific.
Yeah,
you can't use now.
And it's also just think about this. While it's super cold right now in Florida, there's going to be a shift. Daniel's talked about it time and time again about how if the water eventually gets hot enough, it's going to lead to more power for these devastating hurricanes, because there's always a cycle. If it gets cold, it's going to get hotter, and
if it's hot, it's going to get colder in certain areas. Because it's not like a human body where if you have a fever, you have a fever everywhere. It's a planet that has different amounts of sunlight hitting it at different locations.
More El Niños, La Niñas.
The way the current, in a sense, the way that we're used to things being warm and cold changes based on these energy bands moving based on the amount of heat we're retaining.
And also remember, I know we were talking about ice sheets, but just remember that the power of these hurricanes that we saw last year were much more larger and more powerful than we were normally used to. And scientists were very close to saying that there was a different type of category, a Category 6. They're still collecting data on those hurricanes that hit the South and Puerto Rico, and as well as a few other countries that are in the Caribbean. But I only can imagine what next year is going to look like and how devastating those storms will be.
How is Puerto Rico doing?
It's
terrible.
Still recovering.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
actually have a friend of
Yeah.
ours, a few people who are in Puerto Rico, and half the island is still doesn't have energy.
Yep.
What was it last week?
When
They
it was
said
supposed to be, like-
900,000 people without energy.
Yeah, right now
It's
I believe
a lot.
I believe that half the island still has no power.
So remember, one part that it's even the way people say it's global warming, like, oh, it's not warming everywhere. Okay, the thing you got to realize is it's an overall warming trend. Second, I think more importantly, it's a more extreme. So if it's cold at the winter, it's going to be colder in the winter for a longer period of time. If it's hot in the summer, it's going to be hotter for longer periods of time. If every now and then you get drought, you're going to get more droughts that last longer. If you have monsoon seasons, you're going to have longer periods of rain. It's a overall warming, but that causes, again, what we talked about in previous episodes, it causes all this energy to accumulate that does more things.
Yeah,
Right.
it's becoming more and more intense to the point to where we are at right now, where the weather has become so intense, it's actually going beyond what the scientists' models were predicting.
Yeah, and think about how this is going to affect our agriculture and how we eat our food or consume our food, be it vegetables, fruits, or even meat products or anything else like that. This is going to impact our civilization, and it could put us as a species in a very dangerous spot. But
You're watching Hard Lens Media.